All right, well, hello everyone. Welcome to the College of Letters and Sciences Ask Me Anything series. I'm Scott Carter, from the college's Office of Strategic Communications and Advancement. Today we're talking with Academic Advising Services to learn how they help students explore and develop their educational and personal goals here at UW-Madison. Want to thank you all for tuning in today. I am joined here by Jim Gradiger. He's an academic advisor with AAS. I'm also joined by Elise Farney and Catherine Anderson. Elise and Catherine are both peer advisors with Academic Advising Services. And I'll let them introduce themselves here in a minute. Hopefully everyone is familiar with how the Ask Me Anything format works, but for those of you who are new to this, we'll start off today with brief introductions from Jim, Elise, and Catherine. We'll let them introduce themselves and I'll let them talk about what AAS is, what services they offer, and what you can get out of it as a student. And then we'll launch into questions. For questions, please post those into the YouTube live chat, and I'll take those and ask them of our panelists today. I want to mention as well, we do have a survey that is available that I'd like you to fill out after today's session is over. You'll find the link for that down in the description. We'll also be providing closed captioning for today's session after the session is over. We're hoping to get that up in the next few days or so, but unfortunately we don't have the live captions going today. So with all of that out of the way, thanks again. I want to thank Jim, Catherine, and Elise for joining us today, and I will pass things off to you. So Jim, Catherine, Elise, welcome, and thanks for participating in this.
Yeah, thank you. So hello, everybody. My name is Jim Greniger. I'm an academic advisor with the College of Letters and Science Academic Advising Services. So our office works primarily with incoming and undeclared LNS students. So basically any student who comes into LNS who does not have a major declared, which is everybody who comes into LNS because nobody comes in with a declared major, we'll work with our office. So typically we'll work with students during their orientation and then beyond into the first year and sometimes through the first year. So we're assigned to students for as long as up until the point that they declare a major. So for some students that takes place in year 1, for some students that takes place in year 4, and anywhere sort of in between. So we work with students all along the way. We also work with students who are transitioning. So say a student starts in a certain major and then, or a different school or college and then comes into LNS, we would also work with that student. So both myself, Elise, and Catherine with students across all majors within LNS. There's 64 of them right now and currently in the College of Letters and Science. And yeah, so we work with students as they kind of begin their journeys and they start to kind of find their way.
Catherine, I'll pass things over to you. Can you introduce yourself for us, please?
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name's Catherine. I did my undergrad at UW and I majored in psychology, and I graduated in 2015 and now I'm working on my master's in social work. I was a peer advisor in 2017 and 2018 and now I'm back for this summer.
And Elise, thanks for coming today.
And hi, my name is Elise. I am also a peer advisor with the College of Letters and Science Academic Advising Services. I have been working with Letters and Science peer advising for over a year now. I'm going into my final year of undergrad studying psychology.
Great, thanks again to all of you. Let's start off with first question, which is sort of the big question about this fall. Jim, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what advising services are going to look like this fall, at least in terms of what you know now. What things will you be doing differently? What sort of changes have you made to the services leading up to when students get back here in September?
Yeah, so the services, at least as far as we know what we're going to do now in the fall, which of course is subject to change as pretty much everything is at this point. But what we're planning on doing for now in the fall is to continue to do advising remotely, which is what we've been doing since March. So essentially students are able to make appointments with us, and it takes it is a remote appointment, so it's either done via video from my lovely basement, or students can also do a phone appointment as well with us. Additionally, we also continue to offer drop-in advising, so no appointment is necessary. And so students can kind of request appointments sort of last minute to get in and talk with someone. So we still are continuing to offer the same services, just the mode is a little bit different. So rather than being in person, instead of that, it's being done remotely. So the plan is to continue that into the fall.
And will students still sign up for advising in the same way they have been? We've got some prospective students on as well, so who probably obviously aren't going to be familiar with exactly how you would sign up for an advising appointment. Can you talk to them a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So every student who comes through SOAR with LNS, when they're an incoming student, is assigned to one of our advisors. So we have I'm among a staff of 14. So there's 14 advisors in our office. So LNS students are assigned to any one of them. And basically, we use a scheduling system. It's called Starfish. I guess I don't want to get too technical on what it is, but we use a scheduling system where students can log in through their student portal and make an appointment that way. Basically, what they do when they go through that is they see our calendar and they see available appointments listed, and they can just go in and click on one, and that's how they would make an appointment.
Great. Thanks very much for that. Catherine, can you talk a little bit about what it is that you actually do with AAS and how some of that might be changing for this coming year?
Definitely. So kind of like Jim mentioned, a lot of what I've done in the past is the same as this summer. The mode is just a little bit different. So in past summers, SOAR kind of took place over 2 half days. So students would be meeting with us in groups, and we would go over how to use the enrollment system, which is on My UW. It's an app called Course Search and Enroll. So we'd kind of introduce that. We would go over general education requirements that first-year students should be aware of, and kind of meet with them one-on-one to discuss majors that they might be interested in, and answer just any general questions about campus life. And this summer, it's pretty much the same. We're just doing it all over the computer, obviously. So once again, we do group sessions every day, and we meet with students in pairs of peer advisors that way. And we answer, again, general questions. And then while students are actually enrolling, it's a little more independent this summer, so they kind of do it on their own time. But peer advisors are always available to meet with them one-on-one throughout that process if they have any issues or questions.
Thanks. And Elise, did you have anything you wanted to add to Catherine's answer?
Yeah, I would just echo everything said. As peer advisors, we really are here to just support the incoming students in any way that they need us to be there for them. So like Catherine said, we do those small group sessions. We also do the one-on-one enrollment help sessions for students. And we're just able to answer a lot of general questions that students are coming in with about their class requirements and about student life. So everything that Catherine said, I would definitely echo that.
Thanks very much for all of that. Well, I'll ask a question just to sort of kick things off a little bit more with just typically how your advising sessions or services actually work. So, can you walk me through what a typical advising session looks like? I mean, I know back when I was an undergraduate, I didn't attend UW-Madison, unfortunately, but back when I was an undergrad, I definitely did not make use of advising services at my undergrad institution as well as I wish I had, looking back on it several years later. So can you walk us through a little, what does a meeting look like? When you're talking to a student, what sort of questions have you typically gotten, and what sort of information do you definitely try to get across to people?
Yeah, I can start. And in fairness to you, Scott, the advising system is much more robust now than it was even just a couple years ago. So yeah, I mean, I really try to keep my advising a little bit more student driven. So it's sort of the typical appointment is kind of driven by what a student wants to come to accomplish. So usually I always make sure that the student is the kind of has the first move to ask the questions that they want to have answered. But I would say to kind of typically talk about what we discuss, I think depending on the time of year, enrollment can be a big one, whether it's in summer during orientation or later on in the year during enrolling in other semesters. So students might come in to get help with enrollment. Either they know some courses they want to take, but they just want to make sure that they're on track for graduation, or maybe they don't know what they want to take, and we sort of have a discussion about what that looks like. I think oftentimes I try to engage students in discussions about their goals. So what is it that they're trying to accomplish? A degree from LNS is extremely flexible, and there's thousands of different ways to finish a degree in LNS. And so helping students navigate all of the choice that they have and how to create something that is unique and useful to them and what their goals are. So I think for me, that's what I like most about my work in a lot of cases, is sort of helping students customize their education in that way. And so students will often kind of talk about that too. And sometimes it's just as simple as, I might have students who make an appointment to come in and talk about how their classes are going. Maybe they want me to let me know that their classes are going really well. Maybe they want me to let me know that their classes are not going very well. And maybe they want to be connected to resources for tutoring help or whatever it may be. So I oftentimes explain academic advising as akin to like being a general practitioner as a doctor, where I might not always have the answer for everything, but I can refer out to specialists as needed. And we're sort of the place to start when a student doesn't know where else to begin.
Catherine and Elise, I mean, your role there is a little bit different as a peer advisor. Can you talk about just when you meet with a student, I mean, obviously every student is going to have unique circumstances and unique questions they're coming in with, but as much as possible, what does a sort of typical mentoring session look like for you?
Yeah, so typically Elise and I just work with students prior to when they enroll. So we answer a lot of those just first questions that they have about student life and academics. It really depends on the student. Some students come in and they don't have many questions. They just kind of want to get things done, which is totally great. And they have very specific questions like, what class do I need to fulfill this? And we're always happy to answer those questions. All other times, students they're full of questions just about like what it's like to be a college student. And they ask a lot of questions about what we've gone through. So I feel like our role as peer advisors are really useful in those situations, just because we can speak from experience that we've gone through so recently. Similar to Jim said, a lot of times we'll refer students to other resources. So we'll a lot of times give them links to like the student org website or the housing website if they have questions about residence hall life. So yeah, just a lot of kind of letting them know what resources to support them are available on campus, and then just speaking from our personal experiences that we've gone through.
Elise, I think your video may have cut out. I'm not sure if we still have you on audio or not, but wanted to make sure if you had anything you wanted to add. All right, it looks like we may have lost Elise on audio as well. We'll try to get that back up. So let's go through some basic sort of questions then. So, Jim, you mentioned students coming in with all sort of, asking for particular classes or things like, how do you actually declare a major certificate? So let's tackle that one. For a student you're coming in without a major declared as a first year student, how do you work towards actually declaring that major certificate as a UW-Madison undergrad?
Yeah, so I'll sort of start by saying that students come in all sorts of different paths on being ready to declare a major. So I have some students that I meet with who may have certain ideas of which ways they're leaning about declaring a major, but they're not ready to commit to anything yet, or they want to explore things. And I have some students who are on the opposite, where they come in and they're like, I know I want to major in this thing, and I want to get started right away. So students are kind of on all different sort of areas of the decision-making process when it comes to majors. The one thing I'll add to that is that an LNS degree, because of the flexibility, is it very much is forgiving for students who take time to pick a major, or who maybe switch majors. So they start out majoring in one thing and then they switch. And switching majors within LNS most of the time does not actually lead to any sort of delay in degree completion. So that's kind of the main thing that I like to make sure students know about major, is like, a lot of students might have the idea like, I need to start my major right away if I want to graduate on time. And in most cases in LNS, that's actually doesn't have to be true. But that being said, if I'm working with a student who is ready to declare, it varies by department. I wish there was one way that it's like, when you declare a major, this is exactly how you do it. But every department has their own process. I would invite anybody who is a prospective student or perhaps a fall student to check out it's called The Guide, which is just guide, guide.wisc.edu. And perhaps we can get that thrown into the chat as well, so people can access that. But you can, from that, you can access our different majors in LNS, and actually includes information on how to declare. By and large, it tends to take the form of meeting with someone in the department to fill out some paperwork. So if you want to declare a history major, which is my former area of study, if you want to declare a history major, you go to the history department, you fill out a form, you declare a history major. So by and large, that's pretty much how it works.
Now, what if, so going from my own experience, so I actually started out as an undergrad in computer science and then switched to music, which is what I eventually got my degree in. For people who are making that drastic of a change, in my case, it was from a college of engineering to a school of liberal arts, or a school of music in my case. For people who do have some of those tougher, transitions to make, or more challenging transitions to make, how do you help them in those regards?
Yeah, I think when I'm working with a student who is coming from outside of LNS, like if we take that as an example, perhaps they started somewhere else and they're coming in, I think, giving them kind of a good feel for like what they've already completed, because usually the student, without knowing it, has done a lot of LNS requirements by virtue of their requirements in their other school or college. So oftentimes they have a little bit more done than they realize. And sort of, with that student, I would take some inventory and sort of figure out what was left to be completed, and what was kind of on the to-do list. And then we start breaking it up and say, okay, your timeline, you have this many semesters left before you want to graduate. If that's the goal, how do we arrange things so that it all fits within that timeline? So it's a little bit about sort of situating, so getting them situated correctly so that they know what their new requirements are, and then kind of figuring out like, okay, how long do we want to take to finish this? And based on that timeline, how are we going to do that? Because of things like summer classes and things like that, it can accelerate things a little bit for students who might be coming in from outside of LNS and need to make up some ground. So it's a lot of problem solving and things like that, but it's doable. It definitely is doable.
Thanks very much for that. Catherine and Elise, I want to toss the question to both of you. Obviously you're students right now. I mean, so I think one of the things that I've often talked for the advisor that I know are students coming in looking for advice on which specific class should I take. What do you do in those situations? You've obviously got a lot of experience both as students and also working in AAS. Can you tell me a little bit about how you answer that question for a student coming in?
Yeah, for students who kind of ask me for recommendations on courses, I usually just tell them that every student kind of has like their own personal interests and their own kind of experiences coming into college. And so I would kind of play on those interests and those experiences for each individual student. Something that might have worked well for me might not work well for someone else, and kind of vice versa. So I would just say play on your strengths and your own personal interests. We kind of touched on this a few times in the meeting, but the College of Letters and Science really offers a lot of autonomy in choosing courses and kind of exploring in different areas and topics. So there is a lot of time to kind of explore those different interests that you have. And so I kind of just give them that feeling of empowerment that they can decide on their own kind of what courses to take, and really just to focus on those interests, like I said.
And Catherine, I'll pass this on to you now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that Elise said. A lot of times I'll kind of speak from personal experience, and rather than telling them a specific course that I think they should take, I'll just kind of explain that in the past I've signed up for a course that felt kind of random to me just to fulfill some sort of elective requirement, and it ended up being one of my favorite classes. Like, for example, my first year I took, I think it was Sociology 131, it was Criminal Justice in America. And then I ended up doing an entire certificate in criminal justice. So I just kind of emphasize to students that they do have time to explore other interests, and that it's a really good idea to kind of take every semester a couple classes for your major or general education requirements, but always just add a course or two that are just for your interests, because they can really shape your college experience in an important way for sure.
Thanks for that. Catherine, you actually brought up an interesting topic when you mentioned that you pursued a certificate. What is a certificate? What does that actually mean? What does it entail? Like, what do you have to do in order to get one? What sort of, I guess, special achievements does it confer upon you when you finish your degree?
So yeah, I actually did two certificates. I majored in psychology, and then I did certificates in criminal justice and global health. So you definitely have room in the total credits that you need to do multiple things. I remember when I started, I felt really overwhelmed just by the psychology major itself, and I felt like I was definitely in a rush to get it all done, but that turned out to be not true, and I had plenty of time and space in my schedule to pursue other things as well. But UW uses the term certificate in replace or to describe a minor essentially. So it's just a different word for minor. And I think both of the certificates that I did were about 15 credits each, so less than a major, but definitely like a substantial number of classes to pursue a certificate. But basically it shows that you've got like a pretty good breadth of knowledge in a certain area. Both of the certificate programs I did also had other requirements. So for the criminal justice certificate, I had to do a semester-long internship, and I interned for a nonprofit. And then for the global health certificate, I had to do a fieldwork component. And that program offers a lot of different kind of ways you can fulfill that. So I could have done it in Wisconsin or a different state in the United States, but I chose to go to Tanzania for about a month in the summer. So definitely certificates are a great way to kind of push yourself to pursue opportunities that you might not otherwise. So it was a really efficient way for me to do both an internship and study abroad because they were built into the actual program itself.
Jim, Elise, do you have anything that you want to add about how the certificate process works here at UW?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'll add to it, because I think what makes the certificate, especially for those who may be prospective students, certificates different than like what other universities will call minors, is that oftentimes they're not merely miniature versions of a major, which is often what a minor is. Oftentimes they have more of almost a professional component sometimes to them. So like, for example, there's a certificate through the Comm Arts department in digital cinema production. So actually has courses that are completed in like film editing and sound design and actually making videos. So it's not a version of a major necessarily, but rather it's designed to give students actually some technical expertise in the production of cinema. Catherine's criminal justice certificate is another example of something that's very professionally oriented. It's not a version of a major. There's no criminal justice major at UW, but it includes that internship placement in there as well to get experience. So the certificate program is somewhat unique when compared to other universities that have minor programs, in that oftentimes they have like a internship component or a capstone of some kind that you have to complete to demonstrate your mastery. So they definitely are great additions to any educational plan for sure.
And so what do you actually have to do to declare that certificate? And what sort of paperwork do you have to fill out for that?
Same thing. Every certificate has their own thing. I would say, again, it generally tends to be filling out something with the department. Some certificates you actually have to apply for. So for instance, the business school has a certificate in business that LNS LNS students can do, and students actually need to apply to be able to do that certificate. But by and large, it's again filling out a form. Sometimes it's on the website and it's nice and easy to do. Sometimes you do it by meeting with someone. It really kind of varies from certificate to certificate. But yeah, basically it's paperwork.
Okay, thanks for that. You touched on another subject I was going to bring up as well. Is you mentioned with a certificate through the School of Business. So what happens if a student comes in who is either majoring in an LNS degree, but doing a constant or doing a certificate or another major, say, in another school or college that's not within LNS? How does that work? How does the student, like, who do they go to first, and what are the criteria for when they would work with you and when they would work with that other school or college?
Yeah, so there's sort of two different possibilities, and I guess I'll touch on them each individually. It's LNS students can do certificates outside of LNS, certificates that are housed outside of LNS. So certificate in business being an example of one. Another one I see a lot is actually Catherine's Global Health Certificate is an example of something that's outside of LNS. There's an Education Services Certificate that's outside of LNS. So LNS students can do an LNS degree while getting a certificate outside of LNS. That's fine. Where things change a little bit is when students are completing a major outside of LNS. So for the most part, although this is not universal, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, students who want to do a degree with, like, let's say a student wants to do finance, which is in the business school, and philosophy, which is in LNS. They can do that. They would just have to be getting their degree from the School of Business, and then philosophy becomes their additional major. So for the most part, students can double major with an LNS major outside while doing a major outside of LNS, but they have to be in that other school or college as a degree-seeking student. So typically then what that would mean is that that student would start their journey there. So if we take the example of the finance philosophy major, they would go through their orientation with the School of Business. They would apply for the School of Business. They'd go through orientation with business, and then they would declare their philosophy major at some point. At that point, they're only responsible for the major requirements in that example. So there are no additional degree requirements that are involved. They just have to do the major requirements. But for the most part, that's how it works. There's a very small handful of majors outside of LNS that students in LNS can double major with, like education studies is an example. Global health is a new one. Students can major in global health in LNS. But that's the vast minority. Most majors students have to be in the other school or college.
Well, let's turn things back, roll things back for a minute. Let's talk a little bit about the four-year plan. So what does a four-year plan look like for a student? What goes into developing that?
Yeah, so again, I'll refer back to the guide. Is actually, if you click on any major within the guide, you can actually see on the right-hand side in the little menu, includes a link for a four-year plan. So every major in LNS has a four-year plan available on the guide. And it's important to stress that these are just examples. Every department was tasked with submitting one four-year plan. Of course, there are many ways that students could complete their studies in 4 years. So it does not need to be followed to a T. It's merely a suggestion. But I would say, like talking in general terms, like for most students, taking about 4 classes a semester is about average. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 3, depending on the total credits of the classes. But 4 is a pretty comfortable average. And so most students will complete 1 to 2 courses per semester in their major. And then their remaining credit will be made up with finishing other degree requirements like breadth requirements, working on a second major or certificate, or just taking courses in an area of interest that may not be a major or a certificate. And so that sort of is typically what a four-year plan would look like. If you look at one, it typically puts in 1 to 2 major courses every semester, and then fills out the rest with degree requirements or second majors. So those plans can be truncated if a student wants to do that, if they want to do a 3.5-year or 3-year plan, if that's what they want to do, and or if they want to elongate it and they want to do it in 4.5, or as I did once upon a time, 5-year plan, that's fine too. So it's customizable. It's merely a suggestion, but it, you know, especially for those of you who are prospective, if you want to get an idea of like what a 4-year plan looks like for your major, you can take a look at one.
Thanks for that. Elise, I'll throw that to you. You're a rising senior, so you've completed 3 years here at UW. You know, can you tell us a little about your experience? You know, how flexible did you find the 4-year plan? You know, how helpful was it in sort of structuring the 3 years you've completed so far and getting you know, towards nearly completing your degree here?
Yeah, as Jim was kind of talking about, the 4-year plan that is available for students is definitely just a suggestion. But for me, I thought that it was a really helpful way to structure my semesters. So I kind of had an idea of what a student in their first semester of their sophomore year might be taking. So I thought that it was a really helpful structure, I guess kind of a framework for how to complete your studies in a certain amount of time. But like Jim said, every student kind of has their own path. So I definitely think that it's okay to take that with a grain of salt and to kind of customize it to fit your own needs and your own goals. But yeah, for me, I thought that was really helpful just to kind of plan out my semesters. And so I could finish in my goal of 4 years. It also allowed me to study abroad. So with a little extra planning, I was able to study abroad during my time at UW-Madison. Yeah, so I thought that it was really helpful, and I thought there was a lot of flexibility with the 4-year plan and kind of switching different courses to different semesters and kind of just working through that to fit kind of my goals, my own personal goals.
Thanks for that. I want to follow up on something you talked about, study abroad. Is that something that Academic Advising Services helps with? I mean, it sounds like you were able to do that for, it was a semester, a year, but, and still able to make it into, you know, with your plans to finish in 4 years. And Catherine, you had mentioned, we can follow up after Elise discusses her experiences, but you had mentioned doing the fieldwork project overseas. So, you know, you know, how did advising services, how did you approach and discuss this with your advisor to make sure that you could still fit these experiences into, you know, making sure that you were still graduating within the 4-year period? So at least I'll go with you first, since you were just talking about your study abroad.
Yeah, I think advisors can really help plan out your years at UW-Madison so that you can structure in study abroad experiences or internships or anything like that. So I definitely think that the advisors in LNS especially are really helpful in kind of planning that out for you. So Jim kind of talked about this before, but kind of creating that timeline and just, you know, deciding which classes will happen at what time so that you can plan for things in the future.
And Catherine, can you talk a little bit about, so you said you spent some time overseas doing field work. You know, how did you work that into your own 4-year plan and your own sort of, you know, the coursework that you had to do to finish your degree here at UW?
So I actually added the global health certificate pretty late during my time at UW. I graduated in 2019, and I think I decided to do global health like towards the end of 2017, around there. So I kind of added it on at the last minute, and so the advisors for that certificate were really helpful in helping me figure out how I could actually finish everything for that certificate while still fulfilling all the requirements that I had left for my degree as a whole. Um, One thing they were really helpful with was the timing of the field work. So I could have done it during the semester if I wanted to. I could have done it over winter break or summer. I decided to go with summer. They provided some guidance by kind of talking about what I would want to do in the future. So I told them that I planned to go to graduate school, and they recommended maybe doing it during the summer so that during the semester I could focus on filling all my applications out and getting letter of recs and doing all that part, which was definitely like a lot of work while still being in school. So yeah, I first decided that I wanted to do the field work in summer, and then they kind of talked through my interest with me, and we settled on it was called Fieldwork UW Healthcare in Tanzania, I think, and it was for about a month. and I traveled with 10 other students, and we worked for a nonprofit that takes UW students to Tanzania twice a year, and it was providing reproductive health education to adolescents there. So that was definitely like one of my favorite experiences at UW. And the advisors for the global health certificate just made it a really seamless transition to kind of add that in and still graduate on time.
Thanks. So you've both sort of spoken about internships a little bit. I'll toss this one to Jim. So how do you work with students to help set up those internships? And if not, what sort of advice or what sort of resources do you provide to get students set up in an internship?
Yeah, so I would say for the most part, our office usually doesn't handle most questions about internships. I would more, if I were working with a student on it, I would talk about it as terms of their overall plan, like where might this take place and how might that fit into a plan. But when a student's actually in the moment of seeking an internship, applying for one, I would usually refer students to SuccessWorks, which is the LNS's sort of career services, if it helps to think of it that way. And so they would work with students similar to how I work with students on building an academic plan and setting goals academically. They would work with students on setting a career plan. So I want to do this specific type of job. And so how might that look to actually scaffold that? So actually, I worked over there when I was a graduate student, so I've done some of that myself, but kind of breaking down those goals into steps. And oftentimes it starts with the internship experience as an undergrad. And so they can work with students on how to do an internship search, where to start looking for those based on interests that they may have. They have what are called career communities, which are clustered around sort of different interest areas. So it's not broken down by major, it's actually broken down by career. So students in any major can be a member of any of the career communities and get in touch with employers that way, people who may be hiring or at the very least may be willing to informationally interview. And so when students are sort of ready to start planning for that, SuccessWorks really does become the sort of hub for them for that. And it's sort of a tandem between what I do and what SuccessWorks does to kind of put together the whole sort of package, so to speak.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely working with SuccessWorks is I know has helped a lot of students. I'm not sure if Catherine or Elise, if you've had a chance to work with them or not. I want to take a step back. I'm sort of looking at some of the things coming in and looking at some of the topics we discussed in preparing for the day. So one thing I think we didn't really touch on at the beginning, like what is a degree? What is a major at UW-Madison? What does it entail? How much coursework does it actually entail to get a degree from UW-Madison and to major? We talked a little bit about for a certificate, I think, around 15 hours many times in order to get a certificate. What does a degree actually, what does it take to do that? And what does it take? What are the requirements for getting a degree from UW-Madison? And what types of degrees? I know there are a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Science. What are some of the differences between those two?
Yeah, so now we're starting to dig into what my favorite thing about LNS is, and that is sort of the flexibility in the degree, which I hope will come out when I talk about what the degree is. Actually, to answer the first question about what are the different degrees, we actually offer 8 degrees in the College of Letters and Science. Most students in LNS do the Bachelor of Science BS or the Bachelor of Arts BA. But we also do offer degrees, both BS and BA in journalism, the Bachelor's in Music, Landscape Architecture, Social Work, Applied Mathematics, Engineering, and Physics, also known as AMAP. Catherine and Elise, help me. I think I'm forgetting one of them, but there are 8 different degrees that LMS offers. So most students do, again, BA or BS, Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science. A degree in LNS is 120 total credits. So when you think about that in terms of 4 years, that's about 30 credits per year, about 15 credits per semester, sort of on average. So 120 total credits. And now we talk about, so the degree is sort of the overall sort of completion. And within that degree, you can have any and as many majors as you want. So The BA and the BS is not tied to major, so you can be an English major and be a BS. You can be a biology major and be a BA. It doesn't actually change how the major is made up. So within that degree, again, you can have, you have to have at least one major, but you can have more if you'd like. Most majors tend to be 30 to 45 credits or so, depending on the major. So that's about a third or so of a 120 credit degree. Um, Also, the degree requirements will come with the required breadth that is required of an LNS degree, which is about 30 or so credits for most students, 36 credits. So again, another third of the degree. But sort of what is most important and what I like the most about an LNS degree is that that leaves a third, or for most students more, of their degree that is sort of open for customization. So one of the most typical questions that I get is, if I double major, is it going to take me longer to graduate? And almost universally, the answer is no, because of that built-in flexibility. So with that open 30 to 40, sometimes 50 credits a student may have, they can complete a second major. They can do 2 certificates like Catherine did. They can just take more courses in their major. I took nearly 60 credits in my major just because I liked it so much. So if I have a student who says, I just really like this thing and I want to take more of it, that's fine. I have no issue with that. So students can really make whatever they want to make out of their LNS education. And I think that's the one thing I really try to make sure students recognize is, and I think, forgive me, I can't remember if Catherine or Elise said this, but they use the term empower. And I think that's a big part of it, is making a student realize that they really are at the wheel. They're not being taken for a ride, they're driving the car. And so if a student comes in and says, I want to do this is a goal that I have, great, we can talk about ways that you can double major in computer science and English creative writing, which actually I have a student that's doing that. 2 majors that seem very different from one another and is doing both. Also doing a certificate in 3D modeling too, by the way, all part of a 4-year plan. So the degree, again, 120 total credits. Majors tend to be 30 to 45 credits, and then certificates tend to be about 15 to 18, depending on the certificate. So if that gives you kind of an idea of how it all fits together. And then if you're double majoring, you're doing 2 majors within 1 degree. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing 2 or 3 degrees if you're double or triple majoring. Those majors are just all housed within the degree. I always say the degree is like a house and the majors are like bedrooms. You can have 1 bedroom, you can have 2 bedrooms, you can have as many bedrooms as you want, but it still is contained within that one house. So I always say, whenever I talk to prospective students, if there's one thing that you remember about this, it's that an LNS degree is flexible and it can be catered to exactly what you want to create. And so I love it when students come to me and say, I want to build this. And we actually sit down and we talk about a way that we can do that. And that just makes everything more meaningful for that student.
And I think, Jim, I think you may have mentioned this before, but so, I mean, on average, I think you said most courses are 3 credits. I mean, obviously there are other courses with fewer and more credits. Can you talk a little bit about, or what makes the difference there? What is sort of the average average number of credits you earn for taking a class at UW?
Yeah, that's a good point to break down what we mean by a credit. I would say so. Courses at UW-Madison can be as little as 1 credit, and they can be as large as 6 credits. I would say the bulk of courses tend to be 3 or 4 credits. Science courses that have labs or math courses with discussion sections might be 5 credits. But basically a credit, sort of defined as basically 1 hour of classroom instruction. So if you're taking a 3 credit class, you're typically going to be sitting in class for 3 hours per week. So it might be Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 50 minutes a day, because we round up at UW-Madison. So most courses are going to be 3 to 4 credits. So when I talk in terms of like it's a certificate and it's 16 credits, that might be 5 courses, that might be 4 courses, depending on the certificate. So yeah, 3 to 4. So when we also talked earlier about credit load and 3 to 4 courses, that tends to sometimes be around 15, 16 credits, again, depending on the type of class.
For Catherine and Elise, can you talk a little bit about, I mean, so if the average student is, sort of taking 15 credit hours a semester, have you felt that, was that pretty typical for you when you were, as you're taking classes here? And just in general, what your personal experience is, for taking, if you've taken a 4 or 5 or, larger credit course, what that experience was sort of like versus taking sort of your average 3 credit class. Catherine, we'll start with you.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, most of the courses that I took here at UW were 3 to 4 credits. I actually don't think that I had any that were 5 credits, but I definitely had friends who did. I think I took my first year here, I took 13 credits my first semester, and then I did 14, and then all the other semesters I think I did 15. So my advisor had recommended that I start off a little bit on the lighter side just to kind of adjust to UW, make that transition, and kind of start off strong academically. And I'm really glad that I did that because I felt like it gave me a lot of room to kind of figure out what works best for me studying wise and just kind of figure out campus and everything. But yeah, 15 credits for all the rest of the semesters was definitely doable. I felt like it was I was able to manage the course load well because I would have 4 to 5 classes, depending on obviously how many credits they were. And in my experience, this might just be a personal thing, but I sometimes found it was easier to take, let's say, four credit classes versus 5 3 credit classes, just because that way you're focusing on just 4 different topics instead of 5. So they might be more credits, which usually would entail more work, but I felt like it was easier to manage just because I wasn't like putting my brain in all the different areas. So it really depends on the person. I also had friends who took more than 15 credits some semesters because they wanted to graduate early or on time, and on time meaning 4 years. And that worked well for them. It's just really what you feel capable of and what you have room for in your schedule.
And Elise, the same question for you, if you can talk about your experiences a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Catherine was saying. In my first semester on campus, I did 14 credits, and that seemed like a really manageable number for me. And it still allowed me to get involved on campus outside of my academics. So it allowed me to meet other people, kind of look at joining some different clubs on campus, and just kind of get used to being a college student in general. To a lot of our students that we see at SOAR, we say that getting adjusted to campus is kind of like a 3 credit course in itself. So it's totally okay to take, 13, 14 credits in your first semester just to kind of get adjusted to that transition. And that proved to be really beneficial for me in my first semester. And then, as Catherine said, as my semesters kind of went on, I increased my credit load a little bit, but it still was definitely manageable for me while working, while getting involved, outside of classes. So yeah, I definitely think that that is a manageable credit load for first semester students. And then, when you're coming in with the credits from other things that you might have done in high school, some students do and some students don't. And either way, that's totally okay. But those can sometimes count towards your overall credits that you have in college. So that can sometimes give you a little bit of flexibility in those semesters as well.
Thanks for bringing that up to us. That's a great point. We have about 10 minutes left. So if you have any other questions for Elise, Catherine, and Jim, make sure that you put those in the YouTube chat so we can get those to them. And while we wait for a couple more questions to come in, can we talk a little bit about summer courses? How popular are summer courses at UW? I know when I was an undergrad, I took summer classes for 2 years actually to catch up because of the way I changed my own major and things were far less flexible 20 some years ago. It's where I was, but if I don't know if Elise, Catherine, if you've had experience taking summer classes, or Jim, if you want to talk a little bit about how those work and how many students actually do take courses over the summer here at UW. Jim, we'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah, I think the summer term has really become a thing in the last 4 years or so on campus. So prior to that, summer term was not particularly robust at UW-Madison, and so students either didn't take summer courses or they took them elsewhere. And transferred them back. And just in the last couple of years, UW has really expanded its offerings in the summer, which can do one of two things for students. It can help students to catch up. So if a student is coming to a program late and they sort of want to catch up because they want to graduate by a certain time, summer courses are a great way to kind of make up some ground. Or I also have had students who have taken summer courses as a way to take lighter credit loads in the fall and the spring. So they might want to take only 12 credits per semester, or maybe even less than that because they're working a lot, or I have, you'd be surprised how many students have businesses that they own and run who have entrepreneurial sort of things, ventures that they do. So they want to keep their credit totals lower. So they use summer courses to supplement their fall and spring to kind of take lower credit loads. And then some students who use summer as a way because they want to graduate earlier. They want to do 3.5 years, or they want to do 3 years, and so they take summer courses as a way to kind of speed up things. So it's all of those reasons are valid reasons, and some students might isolate a particularly difficult course that they don't want to take with other classes. So they're like, oh, I'm dreading this. I have to take this one course. I heard it's really hard, so I want to take it in the summer when it's the only class that I have. So again, all reasons students might do it. Summer courses are often online, which used to be more of a rarity up until recently at UW-Madison, but students could do their coursework from anywhere. And some courses are offered in person. So Madison is a great place to be in the summer. I can't complain too much about it. And so if a student wants to stay in Madison, take summer courses, they can do that too.
Catherine and Elise, have either of you had experience taking summer courses here at UW?
I did not take summer courses. I considered it 1 year, but then I decided against it. It really depends, like Jim said, on kind of what you're hoping to do during the semester and how you want to spread out your coursework. What worked for me really well was I would just take the class during the semester, and then during the summers, I would focus on working a lot and kind of earning money to use for the next semester. But I definitely had friends who would work during the semester and take a couple summer courses and still continue to work during the summer. So really depends on your personal situation and when you're hoping to graduate. But from what I've seen with other students, the summer courses are they're flexible in that you can still have a summer, like you can work, do class, and still like enjoy your free time. So it's not like you're spending all day in the library, like focusing on this one course for the whole summer. It's really easy to kind of fit it into your kind of everyday activities.
And also just getting to explore Madison during the summer, which, having lived here for 15 years now, it is quite amazing to do. Elise, have you had experience with summer courses yourself, or with advisees that you work with who have taken them?
Yeah, I personally have not had any experiences with summer courses, but I would just kind of stress what Catherine and Jim were saying about summer courses being really flexible, and just letting students kind of go at their own pace and kind of create their own plan for graduation. So if they needed to work during certain times of the year, that kind of gives them a little bit of flexibility. Or if they want to kind of isolate a certain course. I definitely think that creates a lot of flexibility and allows students to kind of go at the pace that works best for them.
Thanks very much for that.
I guess the one thing I would add real quick too is that summer term, of course, is optional. It is not a required sort of thing. If a student comes to me and they have a certain timeline, I can make it work without summer too, where logistically possible. I know for me, like Catherine said, summer was the time that I worked and made money to buy things. So yeah, it is totally possible to do a 4-year plan without summer courses, but they are an option that is available to students who want it.
Thanks very much for all that. So we've got about 5 minutes left. Would anything that the three of you wanted to mention that we haven't covered today?
I guess I would just emphasize the fact I talk about this a lot with students. That you don't have to have everything figured out right away. I came into UW with a very specific goal in mind. I thought I was going to become a psychiatrist, and clearly I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm really happy that I'm not. So just give yourself time to explore. And the 4-year plans are a great way to kind of have an idea of what you're going to do in the future, but definitely be open to allowing them to change and kind of evolve as you take more classes and have more experience. So during SOAR, we just focus on that first semester of classes and getting students set up and feeling comfortable to make that transition to campus, and then start kind of just start their journey and go from there.
And Elise?
Yeah, I would say that just opening yourself up to new experiences, kind of like Catherine was talking about, and also just opening yourself up to all the support and all of the resources that are available to incoming students. I'm the type of person who has trouble asking for help or asking questions when I have them. So I wish coming into UW-Madison, I would have taken advantage more of the resources and the support that is available to me. Throughout my time at Madison, I definitely learned what is available and how to access those. I just wish I would have started that sooner. Like all of the advisors in the College of Letters and Science, AAS are just really great resources. And they can also connect you with other resources that might be helpful for you as well. So just being open to experiences and to all the support that is available for you.
And Jim, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I think to echo what Elise just said, I think I often will meet with students sort of when they've gotten past the point of where they probably should have asked for help with a class or a personal situation or whatever it might be, and they all say the same thing. They all say, I really wish I would have reached out to somebody sooner, but I didn't for whatever reason. People when they're 18, 19, 20 years old like to be independent and they're used to kind of, handling their own situation, especially academically handling their own situation. And they all kind of say the same thing where they're like, I really wish I would have reached out sooner. I just didn't know that I could or I should. And so, yeah, I would echo what Elise said. I think there are so many services, not just what Elise, Catherine, and I do, but people who do everything from tutoring for specific classes to working with students on mental health to working with students on securing funding for their education, or might be food to eat, all sorts of different things. So it's like no matter what you need help with, we have services on campus that can help you. And so reaching out for help when you feel like you need it that's really good advice for a new student. The next thing I would say is that you really get out of your education at UW what you put into it. And that could be as simple as like bringing a goal or bringing a vision. And you might not have that right away, and that's okay. So I have lots of students who come in who maybe don't have a plan, or they have sort of a vague idea of what they want their plan to be. Or they, like Catherine, they have a plan and then they change it. That happens all of the time, like probably about a third to 40% of my students will change their major idea in the first year. It's fairly common, and a lot of times it's for good reasons. They get exposed to something new and they're very excited about it. So I would say, the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. So come with a plan, come with a vision of what it is that you want to create, and we can help you put that together. So I invite anybody who's on this call who's thinking about what they want their college education to be to really think about what do they want out of it, what do they want it to do for them, and sort of bring that vision, and we can help put it all together.
It's like that's a great message to end on. I think we've only got about a minute left, so I want to take that time. Thank you, Jim, Catherine, Elise. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. For everyone watching, please make sure to fill out the survey. The link is down in the description there. We definitely want feedback for how we can improve these sessions and make them more useful to prospective and admitted students for next year. Thanks again. I really appreciate you all taking the time with us today. Have a good afternoon, everybody.